All right, welcome to another edition of the Georgia Track and Field and Cross Country Coaching Collective podcast. I'm Andy Christie, and today joined by Ryan McClay, the Georgia Mile Split webmaster. We're happy to have him. We're going to be discussing lessons learned from the Olympics, from the track and field sessions that were just outstanding this year. The highest medal count since 1984 LA Olympics. That's what I saw today, which is pretty amazing. Real quick about the collective, we always like to plug it at the beginning of these podcasts. We're just a group of coaches that are trying to promote community in the Georgia coaching world, and you can find our website online. You can find us on social media. And it's headed up by Nick Hustalakis from Marietta, Chris Mayer, Athens Academy, and myself. And so we just try to promote collaboration amongst coaches. But we'll go ahead and dive in to this topic. So much to talk about, and we're going to be kind of jumping around from different events. So we'll start off with the men's 1500. So much to talk about with this. Obviously, an amazing outcome for the U.S. with Grant Fisher, or excuse me, not Grant Fisher, with Cole Hawker. Picking up where Centro left off 8 years ago, and elevating it even more.
Totally different races.
Totally different races. Yes, the slowest final versus the fastest one. But both thrilling in their own way. But let's talk about this year's. We'll get to Grant Fisher in a little bit since I misspoke. But Cole Hawker, showing a different way to take the gold medal. Your thoughts on lessons learned from that race?
As you know, I watched him in the Olympic trials and thought he's clearly on another level from where he's ever been before. He just looks fantastic. And I certainly wondered if he could compete for the gold. And obviously he did. So I think to me, the lesson learned there is he didn't focus on you in a race that was billed as a kicker's race, right? It was kind of like, can Jakob run away from Josh Kerr's kick, right? And because like Josh Kerr has a kick, and of course we all knew Cole Hawker had an amazing kick, but he didn't spend his season developing his kick. If you talk to him, what he did was he focused on longer races. I think he ran a 2-mile indoors that was pretty quick at some point. I can't quite remember what he did. But he did a lot more, as he said, 5K type work and a lot more strength work to make sure that he was there. And so I think that that's a big lesson to a lot of kickers out there is like, you're blessed with this gift of like having more foot speed than your competitors. I think a lot of people make the mistake of like honing in on that and like, oh, let me focus on my strength. And it's not our strengths that we need to focus on, but maybe our weaknesses that we need to focus on. And not that Cole Hawker, who was already in America, sixth place at the Olympics in Tokyo. It's not like he was weak in the strength, but he realized like, hey, I can't quite hang with Jakob and Kerr, but if I start training a little bit more like Jakob, maybe I can hang with him or hang close enough. And then he outkicked him. That's my main takeaway. Obviously, there was a little bit of luck, but with the inside opening up there for him. But at the same time, I watched this one little video where it kind of showed the angle because there were like 3 different angles from that moment in the race, and a lot of this one little video is analyzing it, and it showed kind of him when he first tried to pass on the inside. There wasn't room. He kind of gave Jakob a little tap, and then Jacob moved out a little bit, but still not quite enough. So Cole started swinging out, but then saw that inside open up and took that direct line. And so it's just kind of those split-second decisions of like trusting your gut in a situation like that. I mean, obviously he's a great, fantastic championship racer. So he trusted himself and just went with it, and it worked out for him. So those are my big 2 things of just probably the race of the whole meet.
Yeah, I loved reading afterwards, or maybe I knew this before, actually, maybe after the trials, that Hawker had really been doing a lot of 5K type workouts. to build up that strength because he's known that he's had that kick. I saw in the press conference he said even back to like grade school. So I'm just imagining a field day Cole Hawker taking down this competition. But yeah, it also for me brought up the importance of just being smart about when you're leading. Although I know there's a couple of thoughts about this, but Ingebrigtsen, taking the lead on world record pace was, as Kerr said, a bold strategy, but obviously it did not work out. I think, and Ingebrigtsen even acknowledged that he let maybe the crowd and the atmosphere get to him a little bit, and that's tough if you're in a state meet situation. Bringing this back to high schoolers, and they're wanting to set the pace, to not let those nerves or the atmosphere get to them. And so I think the importance of playing to your strengths, but not letting the occasion interfere with that is something that I kind of took away from that. But on the flip side, it kind of same vein with Valby in the 10K. She led briefly, but then relinquished the lead, and it's kind of a tough situation because I knew she was not going to kick with world class runners at the front of that field. But at the same time, a slow pace I knew was not going to benefit her either. So, but it's hard, especially it's hard for the pros to lead in something like that. Then it's going to be a bit harder maybe for a high school athlete to take the lead when it's a jog fest, which doesn't really happen at the state meet often. But I think back to the boys 7A mile maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know. It was maybe when Sully and Kamari Miller. I can't remember when it was, but it was something ridiculous where the first 800 was just a jog fest, and there were some boys in there that knew this is not going to end well for me. So yeah, just doing something with the lead, being smart with the lead. And then the last thing that comes to mind is I don't know that we talk at the high school level as much about. I mean, we do talk about positioning, but there's a lot of talk about staying on the rail with the pros. And maybe I don't know, feel free to chime in if you want, but there's so little difference between the pros that maybe that, those few extra meters are just so much more important than the high school runners where maybe things open up a little more in their championship style races. But that's something that was talked about a lot in that race.
Yeah, I mean, positioning definitely matters if it's a tight race, right? If you've got like a 2 mile where it's going to spread out, then positioning is a little bit less important, where you've got multiple seconds between athletes. But I think positioning matters, at least at the high school. I think that lesson is tailored down more to the 800 at the high school level, in where I've seen people lose 800s because of poor positioning, not because they made any mistakes other than maybe they just got boxed in, or they weren't paying close enough attention, or just sometimes the mistakes that you make 150 meters into the race end up costing you in the last 150 meters of the race. And it's interesting that happens. But those slow tactical races happen more often at state than you might realize. It seems like every year there's at least a few classifications, and it varies from year to year which classification it is that has the slow tactical race. Sometimes it's the girls 3A race is slow and tactical, or in the next year it's the boys 6A race or whatever. So every year there's some of them that it's like nobody wants to take the lead, and you just get this jog fest early on. But I do think all of us appreciated that this 1500 was not a jog fest. That was just world class, awesome, amazing to watch, and of course the cherry on top being that the American won.
And the Deuce in third.
Yeah, we went 1-3, really 1-3-5. That was a phenomenal finish for all three of them.
Yes, and I guess to reference what you said, it's been a number of years since we've had been able to see like Jefferson, for example, when we had all the boys in one place and you could see all those different races and all the different tactics, versus now we're split up into different locations. And so that there's maybe a plug for if we can get everybody back together again and see.
Nobody would love that more than me.
Yes. All right, let's switch to the sprints, because this is not going to be just a distance focused talk. and the maybe the sprint that's on a lot of people's minds with their various ideas of what should happen. But the men's 4x1, um, we'll just dive right into the deep end here with the chatter and about the botched handoffs and the 20 years, I guess, of no medals. What are your thoughts on lessons learned from that race?
I think my big takeaway is I don't know why they changed up the order as much as they did. You know, they ran three of the same legs in the final that they ran in the prelims. And I get needing to make substitutions because guys like your Noah Lyles and your Kenny Bednareks, they're running the 200 final. You don't want them to have to run a 4x1 prelim before they run the 200 final. We get it. The U.S. is the best sprinting squad in the world, and we have more guys in the finals than anybody else. So we got to run more alternates on the prelims than anybody else usually. But I just don't understand the decision to move Curly. You had a situation where you had Coleman to Curly to I'm blanking on the third guy's name because Courtney Lindsay was the anchor in the prelims and I forget who the third leg was. Wow, that makes me feel like a jerk. But you had this chemistry already, and sometimes you just don't really want to mess with that chemistry. Lyles was almost certainly slated to be the anchor for the final until he got COVID. So if you got a sub in Bednarek, who is almost as fast as Lyles, I don't know why you don't just slot him in right where Lyles was going to be. That's my head scratching decision of the moment. I don't know why you put Bednarek 2 and switch Curly to 4. That I just didn't understand that decision. But I know it's tough because they have limited opportunities to practice with these athletes. These are professionals who are focused on their own individual events, and it's kind of like putting together an all-star team. They're not going to practice hard for the team very much. They just are going to give what they got on the day.
Kyrie King, you can see who that was. Coleman, Fred Curley, Kyrie King, Courtney Lindsay.
Yeah. Okay. So King, yeah, I don't know why. I mean, King stayed third leg for both prelims and finals. I just don't know why you moved Curley when he was already fine at 2.
Yeah, it's tough with obviously there's a lot of different factors with the pros versus high schoolers, and they're not practicing as much as high schoolers are. But yeah, I agree. The order seems like that certainly made some things more problematic. Yeah, I don't know what the solution is with the pros. I know Carl Lewis called for a whole overhaul of things. But again, it's been a minute since he. I don't know. You can make an argument. It's been a minute since he's been on an Olympic team, so I don't know how much insight he has into. But he's also one of the greatest. So I don't know, but it's fascinating that we're so good at sprints and just can't get the stick around. Like you said, we have so many people in the finals. Of course, Noah Lyles getting sick, threw a wrench in things, and that can happen. I know at the state meet where somebody pulls up in the open 100 maybe, or something happens, and you got to go to your alternates, which depending on how, I don't know, it can totally derail a team. I know. But it looks like you still feel like we should have had something going on with a better outcome.
I mean, I get where Carl Lewis is coming from because, I mean, he coaches at Houston and his 4x1s have been pretty good at Houston, but it's just a little different. And I think he knows that. I think maybe, who knows, maybe he's just trying to get the job himself. But I think there's a lot of factors involved. And I think that people forget that we've won a lot at the world championship level too. So I don't think that this is a massive problem. I think you're talking about a wild, crazy event that a lot. I mean, shoot, there's several of us who have had drop batons and things like that, despite the same relay team all season long. So I think it's a little harsh and it's a little misleading to say 20 years since we've won a medal. Well, okay, well, in the Olympics, because we only get a shot once every 4 years. And oh, by the way, don't forget 3 of those Olympics had Usain Bolt in them. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on that panic button. It makes it sound a little bit worse than it is, especially considering they won the world championships last year. But I do think that we need to not make decisions. I think that they thought maybe Fred Curley was a bigger name than Kenny Bednarik, and so like the decision was made to move Curley to the anchor because Curley coming across as the better PR photo op than Kenny Bednarik is my guess as to why that decision was made. And like, come on, don't not in the 4x1, maybe in the 4x4, which I know you want to talk about the women's 4x4, but maybe in the 4x4 make that decision, but not in the 4x1. Just go with team chemistry.
Yeah, I think here's an idea. I think we should have like those. It's sort of like maybe heart rate monitors or blood pressure readings on coaches before the 4x1 and during and after the 4x1. I would love to see those stats because you can just feel the tension in the air. At region, sectional, state around that relay.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I might do that at this upcoming track season because I swear, like every time, whenever I talk to the kids and they're like, "How do you feel about 4x1?" I'm like, I have a love-hate relationship with 4x1. It is so fun and so exciting, but just like the build up to that race is, I hate it so much. It's so nerve-wracking as a coach.
Well, speaking of that, that might kind of lead us into the next one, and we might not have as much to talk about this, but I just wanted to point out the women's long jump and kind of hiccups versus execution from the trials to the Olympics. I'm thinking of Woodall and the in the long jump. How she wasn't she down to her last attempt in the trials because she had had two scratches, I believe, and then of course got the job done and gets to the Olympics and is the gold medal winner. Um, the relays, field events obviously a little different because so much of it is there's just a whole different approach uh, and so much of his technique and just a different mentality. But but yeah, maybe performance under pressure, focusing on what got you to the level you're at. Those are some of the things that kind of stand out to me for lessons learned. She did not panic and scratch that third attempt at the trials and then got through. And I know I'm sure many coaches can relate to athletes maybe at sectionals, maybe they're a heavy favorite to qualify for state and it ends up being closer than they would have liked. But they still get the job done and then they're able to go and take care of business at the state meeting. So that's kind of what came to mind there.
Yeah, those horizontal jumps, you at some point along the way, you are going to have ice in your veins. And so I think that it's probably really, really beneficial for those athletes to find ways to get battle tested during the season. Because at some, like, I mean, one of the best things about track and field is all the multiple rounds of qualifying. So when you get to the championship season and in high school, you've got region prelims, maybe region finals, sectionals, state prelims, and state finals. At some point along the way, something's probably not going to go your way in the first one or two throws or jumps. Just kind of statistically speaking, you're going to be off, you'll be out of sector, something. And so you're going to have to step up and execute the way you're capable of executing. And I think that takes a clutch performance and just guts. Maybe not so much guts, but just like faith in yourself. And I think being there helps. And that, I think Tara showed what a seasoned veteran can do in that scenario. My other big takeaway from the field events, other than Mondo breaking the world record again, uh, is it's always by a centimeter each time. That's got to be like bonus related or something. But the men's high jump was just a thrilling finish, and I loved that they didn't end up taking the tie this time. Is that they went to a jump off, and if you, I mean, I don't know what was said in that exchange when they made that decision to not to do the jump off, but it looked to me like the American was like, no, we're definitely doing a jump off, and the New Zealand guy was kind of content to share the gold. And so like just the different personalities there, the one who really, really wanted to do the jump off and get the gold by himself ended up being silver and costing himself versus the one that at least from my perspective, it looked like he maybe would have been content to just share the gold. Ended up getting the gold outright. So just it just speaks to like the amount of pressure that those athletes can be under. And so we tend to think like, oh, you know, it's like in the NFL when a kicker misses a kick, you're like, you had one job. It's like there's a lot of pressure in that one job. It's the same thing for those field event athletes.
Yeah, it makes me think about, I guess, 15 years ago, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but there used to be, I guess, no tiebreaker rule or overtime in the football state championship. And we had at least one year where there was a tie, like Peachtree Ridge, I know, and I'm trying to think, maybe it was Roswell they were up against. I can't remember exactly, but we had co-state champions, which to me, I think they've since rectified that. Yeah, you want a clear winner. That's why we have this sport. You want to have a clear, or what we have these games, these meets, whatever the sport may be. We want to see a clear winner, I think, at the end of the competition. So glad they don't have that anymore in there. Let's switch to combo men's steeplechase and 800 because we had similar, approaches maybe of kind of laying stuff out on the line. And very different outcomes, obviously, with Rooks coming away with a medal, Hoppel coming away with an American record, but unfortunately being left off the podium. At least as of now, there's some talk of
we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, if he gets moved up or not through the potential doping allegations. But what are your thoughts on those races?
I mean, I have never been more in shock and awe at a track meet than I was watching Kenneth Rooks take the lead at the Bell, and just darn near win it. I mean, we've seen people make that kind of move in 5Ks and 10Ks and steeplechases before. And honestly, a lot of times when they do, the field kind of blows by them at 200 or 150 and they end up fifth, sixth, seventh, something like that. But I was just like, I mean, I just had this huge, stupid grin on my face. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening. This is so exciting. And, not only did he hold on for a medal, he actually fell into third at one point and then battled back and got that silver medal. Seeded 15th out of 16th, again, it just goes to believing in yourself. And that speaks to what Hoppel did too. I know Hoppel doesn't quite come away with the same hardware that Rooks does, but he did say, I feel like I can run 141, and he did. So I thought that was awesome.
Yes, Rooks, just ran such a smart race. I mean, he stayed a little bit farther back early on and worked his way up. And when he sensed, his time. Oh, okay.
Yeah, just keep going. I'll be
there. Okay. When he sensed his opportunity, he took it. And, he could sense this is what's best for me. To take the lead, and I think there were some people around there in that pack kind of wondering, like, who is this guy? They even referenced that on the broadcast. But I think that should inspire people at the high school level that are maybe you're one of the contenders, but you're not the one that everybody's talking about. Hopefully that'll be like, hey, here's somebody that's took advantage of the situation and walk away with a silver medal. And like you said, I loved that he was in third for a split second and then battled back for second. He had the lead, lost that, and still kept fighting until the line and walks away with that silver medal. I love that almost second kick that he had right there at the end on the home stretch.
Yeah, I love what you said about how, you can sometimes catch people off guard when you're not maybe the one that's talked about as much. And we've seen people win some state titles over the years. Joseph Benetti last year was not it's not that he was overlooked necessarily, but he certainly wasn't like the clear and obvious favorite, or even among anybody's top 2 or 3, but he just kind of was like, nope, I know I can do this. Maybe the best example goes back several years to that year. I think it was Davis Stockwell won and Tyler Barber from Mountain View got second.
Yeah.
Neither of those guys were at all talked about as like heavy favorites coming into that race. So there's just so many examples out there, and those are the fun stories in the sport, and so that's why Kenneth Rooks might have the most fun story from the meet.
Yeah. And then with Hopple, like you said, I mean, it's hard. I know he's very disappointed, but when you've run faster than you ever have, faster than any American has, and you're the fourth place finisher in an Olympic final where no fourth place finisher has ever been sub 142. Hopefully he'll be able to realize, okay, I pretty much maxed myself out, and I just happened to be in the fastest Olympic final ever.
Yeah, it's a cruel sport sometimes because on the one hand, you're doing this to see how, yes, you're doing it to compete, but you're also doing this to see just how hard you can push yourself. And that sometimes doesn't end up with the hardware despite you maxing yourself out. And so it's hard to, as a coach, it's hard to like explain that to your athletes in the moment. But I think that usually they get it down the road. Now, on the flip side of that, you got Quincy Hall in the 400, who is in a similar situation where, like, he just maxed himself out and found that gear in the very end. I don't think you can point to Quincy Hall and say he ran with more heart than Bryce Hopple or Kenneth Rooks. I would say probably all three of them ran with just as much heart, and in my eyes were equally inspiring. But Quincy Hall comes away with a gold medal, and Kenneth Rooks silver, Bryce Hopple fourth. So
Yes, I'm glad you brought up Paul. That's another one I want to talk about because, as coaches, we of course preach technique and mechanics and form, and that is very important. But I also love how sometimes some of that stuff goes out the window and it's just get to the line. And that's what I thought about with Hall in that last straightaway. I mean, with 100 to go, he looked like he was already taxed and done. And then he just gets to the, I mean, he just throws in a kick at the end of the 400 that you usually don't see at that level. And was it the prettiest form? No, but who cares? He's got a gold medal. There's not style points. So I love that he was able to get it done. And that's like you said. I mean, at the Olympics, everybody's got heart at the Olympics. Everybody wants to win, but I just love how he did that. That was inspiring to see for sure.
yeah, and I mean, somebody that you also thought was out of it would have been Grant Fisher in that 5K, who just came back from the dead. And I think obviously it's a good lesson in not giving up with Grant Fisher, of just like, sometimes you see, especially at this level, you see like when you get dropped, you just kind of not jog it in. I mean, but for them, jogging, right? You don't kick the last lap when you don't think you're going to win sometimes. And I think Grant Fisher is a great example of like, still give your best effort all the way through the line because you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that move that was made at 600 to go in that 5K was so explosive. And I know that my first thought after the race was, wow, Fisher was brilliant. And that was such a mature race and such a veteran move to not go with that move and just roll them all up at the end. Turns out he wanted to and just didn't have the energy and just was given the best effort that he could. But at the end of the day, he still got that medal because he was still giving that best effort. And you just never know what's going to happen when you just keep going. Like, you might think that you're dropped, but you just don't know when somebody's going too hard and is going to come back to you in the end. So just keep hanging on and giving the best effort that you can give on that day. And sometimes you might be rewarded in that same fashion.
Yeah, 100%. I think I have to admit, I thought he was done. He wasn't in the frame anymore on the screen, and so I thought, oh well, he at least he got that medal in the 10K. He just doesn't have it today. And then all of a sudden, here he comes with a head full of steam down the last straightaway. And I just love that he didn't bag it. He was like, well, I'm going to finish as strong as I can, and then took advantage of people that had just, like you said, had too explosive of a moment or move with 600 to go. And sometimes maybe that's a judgment call. Maybe sometimes that you're just thinking, well, this is what my body can do. But either way, he was able to take advantage of that moment down the line. That also makes me kind of think about the men's 100, because both the men's 100 and the men's 5K rewarded patience. Noah Lyles, what he was like in dead last at some point, 30 meters into it, or
Meters in the race, he was still in last place.
yeah. And that lean, I mean, just again, going back to fundamentals, things that we talk about as coaches, but also just hanging in there and withstanding the storm, because I mean, he needed every one of those 100 meters to get the gold medal. And same Fisher, you could say, in the 5K. And those are things that we talk about. We practice leaning in practice, but sometimes it just seems like maybe it's not as important until it's very important. um, and that was certainly something that came to mind for me watching that race.
Yeah. Just overall though, I mean, I thought it was just maybe the best track meet I've ever seen in my life. Just top to bottom, there was excitement in basically every event. I mean, we didn't even mention any of the hurdle races. Sydney breaking yet another world record in what was Rai Benjamin finally getting. I know you mentioned you wanted to talk about Rai Benjamin, so go ahead and do that real quick.
Well, I'll do a quick lightning round of things. Yeah, Rai Benjamin, I think waiting for your moment, because he, this has been a long time coming for him. It didn't quite happen in Tokyo. And it's a little different because the pros get a chance, every 4 years for the Olympics, more often for world championships, but versus high schoolers who might get one chance during their high school career to do what they want to do at state. But I love seeing him getting his opportunity, his gold medal moment. With Sydney, I think we could talk forever about her amazing talent. But what stood out to me with that was the second place person, Anna Cockrell. Like, still had an amazing race. Yeah, it wasn't anywhere near what Sydney did, but that to me points to, don't play the comparison game. Like, where are you at as an athlete? Where are you getting better? And so if there's runners at the high school level or athletes at the high school level that are up against a 3 or 4 time state champ, it's tough, but are you getting better? Where are you in your process and your work ethic? Kind of like Kovacs, is that Kovacs, Krauser? In the throws, Krauser has won, a million medals, and Joe Kovacs has been. Am I saying? I hope I'm saying that right. I know I've watched him throw. He's gotten silver like 4 times, Krauser, but he's doing the best he can, and he knows, okay, my hat's off to him. I got beat, but I'm focused on myself. That's something that came up for me.
Yeah, and to that point, I was just going to mention, sometimes you get to knock off somebody that's beaten you. Like in the women's 100 hurdles, Russell was able to take the win despite what Camacho Quinn being the slight favorite given her history, I think. So sometimes you're able to beat the best every now and then. That happens too. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up in this lightning round was the men's 4x4 was just one of the most thrilling races I've ever seen in my life. And since it was Rai Benjamin, it was so cool to see him hold off like that. But not just that. I mean, obviously we ran a great 4x4 as a team, but Rai Benjamin had to hold off Letzil Tebogo, who, just barely missed out on winning the 100 and was the gold medalist in the 200 and was, possibly the fastest person on that track. 400 runner versus 100 runner, the 100, 200 guys stepping up to the 4x4 to try and help his country win a gold medal. Came up a little short because he's up against Rai Benjamin, who split, I think, 43-1, I think is what I heard, which is crazy. So just I mean, that race had everything, just top to bottom was just thrilling in every way, shape, and form. And just that's why we put the 4x4 last.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the mindset was of those guys. I mean, with Benjamin, I wonder if he's like, well, this is easy. I don't have to jump over anything. Versus Tobago's like, oh, I get more real estate to work with in this race. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I think I'll throw out one more thing. The women's 4x4, putting Sydney at second, just obviously genius move. I mean, I'll admit I was, this is a distance coach, but I was like, I wonder why they're not putting her anchor. And then I soon realized why, because she blew the race wide open, and then it was just a race for silver. Um, and so that to me was very smart, a very smart strategy where it took the pressure off of third and fourth. Although if I'm fourth, I'm still a little scared because I'm like, oh, I got this huge lead, I got to bring it home. But obviously got the job done.
Clean, so that helps.
Say that again.
She got to run clean, so that helps.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, out of the way of everybody. So, um, I don't know about you. I'm bummed that it's over. I'm super. I'm excited that you got to see it, but man, I'm like, what am I going to watch now? But we can go watch the Sprint Netflix documentary if you haven't seen that already. And
Right.
other, yeah,
It was good. It was
we
good.
got football coming up, so we got that to look forward to.
We got cross country coming up.
Oh yeah, that little sport too. Yeah, exactly. In terms of spectating, I should say, I guess, well, which I guess us coaches are going to be doing too, but different kind of spectating. Um, Coach McClay, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here with us today. And thanks everybody for watching this.